Okay, today is Thursday, June 29th, and on the Guild Wars 2 forums, there has been a new update that is worth spreading around. June 27th balance follow-ups is the name of this post. Cal Cohen says, "Hi everyone. As always, thank you for all the feedback you've shared over the past few weeks. We've been keeping a close eye on the discussion, and it's clear that some of the changes in today's update didn't land as we'd intended. Today, I'll be sharing our current plan for the next update on July 18th, much of which is intended to address the most pressing issues that have been raised. Leading up to that release, we'll be watching your feedback to this post, this week's beta test, and the June 27th update. For those that don't know, the beta test is the ability to use your weapons from other classes. You can make a beta character. You know what? I'll show it in game really quickly here. You can go into character creation. There's beta character slots over here, and you can make characters that can use your different elite specializations weapons. So you can make a scrapper using a mechanist mace, or a mechanist using a scrapper hammer, a soul beast that is using a druid staff, things like that. Okay, so, and that's just for the next few days. And the June 27th update, and may make additional changes as needed. Thanks, Cal CMC Cohen, Skills of Balance League. Scourge. Alacrity Scourge is a build that we were pretty cautious about during development. We were concerned about the potential power level that could result in giving the existing heal Scourge build easy access to Alacrity, and to mitigate this, we reduced the strength of some of its key defensive support skills. Now that the release has been live for a few days, we agree that the changes were too heavy-handed, and we'll be pulling back the reductions to Sand Cascade's barrier as well as the barrier component of Desert Empowerment. We'll also be giving Scourge a reliable source of group protection through Sandstorm Shroud, and increasing the base Alacrity duration to make it a bit easier to maintain. Most people expect their supports to give Sandstorm Shroud, so if they're trying to make this a real support and not a niche one, that is good. Damage Scourge skills builds were negatively impacted by some of the changes made for Alacrity Scourge, and the July 18th release will include some larger adjustments to bring them back up. Sand Cascade increased the base barrier from 996 to 1188 in PvE, increased barrier attribute scaling from 1.25 to 2 in PvE only. Dang it, I did not mean to click on that. Yoink. Okay. Desert Empowerment increased Alacrity duration from 1 second to 1.5 in PvE, increased base barrier from 385 to 572 PvE, increased barrier attribute scaling from 0.75 to 1.0 in PvE. So healing power is going to make these barriers much larger. Sandstorm Shroud, the skill now grants 1.5 seconds of protection to nearby allies each pulse, and 3 seconds of prot to nearby allies on detonation. So they're really driving home Sandstorm Shroud as the one to be used for that column. Fell Beacon no longer reduces the cooldown of torch skills, but now also increases the damage of burning you inflict by 10%. Are they reducing the cooldown of torch skills to compensate? Harrowing Wave reduced cooldown from 20 seconds to 16. There it is. Yes, they are. They are. In PvE, increase the life force per target from 3 to 5. Oh, PvE only. So you can't reduce them in... Well, you didn't really see Scourge Torch much in PvP, I guess. Oppressive Collapse reduced cooldown from 25 to 20 in PvE. Increased might radius from 240 to 360. Might application per condition now capped at 7 condies in PvE. Sadistic Searing. This trait has been reworked and causes Nefarious Favor to burn nearby enemy targets. 2 stacks, 5 seconds of PvE, 1 stack, 4 seconds of PvP, World v World. Demonic Lore increased torment damage from 25 to 33%. In PvE, Sand Sage has been reworked. Gain expertise and concentration while you have an active Sand Shade. 225 in PvE, 150 in PvP World v World. So just 1 active shade. It's not like those other traits that we're asking for 3 shades. Blood as Sand has been reworked. Reduce all incoming damage while you have an active Sand Shade. 15% PvE, 7% PvP World v World. So that was an issue. Scourge had a couple of traits that was like, you know, you get these bonuses for each shade you have out up to 3 shades, and then after the recent change from 20-second duration down to 8, it was like impossible to keep 3 shades out. You could maybe keep 1 and then sometimes 2 up for long periods of time. So they're reworking some of those traits there. I did see a message from Noxxi on the Twitter that who mains Scourge and said that some of these actually look like they could fix some of the problem that Scourge is currently having. I don't see any note about the signets. I've seen a lot of complaints from Scourge. So the spiteful signets allowed signets to work while they were in Shroud. And it was a really, really big thing for like extending the duration of reperform and stuff like that. Kitsu, I see that, thank you. Are these forum notes? Yeah, I'll link these. But I'm not seeing any sign of that. That's been one of the most common mistakes I've seen is the signets. So, sad to see there's nothing about that here. Druid. Druid is in a similar situation to Scourge that we were overly conservative with alacrity, so it is also getting an increase to base duration. We've also seen feedback regarding Druid's might generation, and we're bumping up both the stacks and duration on Spirited Arrival to address this. Grace of the Land increased alac duration from 0.75 to 1. So if you have max concentration, that's going from a quarter second to a half second increase. Spirited Arrival increase might stacks from 3 to 6 in PvE only. Increase might duration from 9 to 12. Alright. I've actually talked to a lot of who I consider to be very intelligent druids today. And that, you know, I've been talking with people on Snowcrow, stuff like that. A lot of them don't agree with my viewpoints, and that's totally fine. I want to make it very clear, I'm just sharing my thoughts on this stuff, okay? Alright, so Grace of the Land is the trait that gives alacrity. Basically, you use Grace of the Land, you go astral, you start doing astral things. This one does like 5 pulses, this one does some pulses, and then with whatever's left over, you slam down some carpal tunnel, and then you've built up a bit of alacrity. And then you leave astral, and it's wearing off, and I can't even get back into astral yet, and it's going to be worn off. So it is not practical right now with the current times to keep it up. But after the patch, with concentration gear, they're adding a half second to each application of this. My dislike... Hi, Patrick. My dislike is the fact that we have to use Astral to apply alacrity. Now, this is just my personal taste on the matter. In Astral, each of those skills has a job. And we are throwing those skills away in order to gain a boon. It's like, you know, huge CC and my biggest heal, gone. Pulsing healing, well, it does provide might now. It didn't used to, but that's done. Condi cleanse, gone. I just used that for alac. You know, that's on cooldown now. You know, just all these things. The ability to go into astral to provide the biggest heal in the game or the huge AoE res, gone, because I gave you alacrity recently. I personally don't like that, especially now. And you know what? Hold on to pause there. I've had a lot of people come to me and they've been like, "How would you fix it, Mr. Smart Guy?" Look, I don't have a ready-to-go solution. A couple of random ideas. One, heal alac mech provides their alac almost passively, combined with hitting F3 occasionally. That's it. 2, Harbinger just pulses it out. That's it. 3, you can look what other MMOs are doing. I love Guild Wars 2, but this whole boon system is getting stupid. World of Warcraft, you just buff before the fight. And that has the added bonus if you don't have to have your longbow and rifle people standing on top of the people swinging daggers. Which, I gotta say, if you like playing long-range class, feels really stupid. So I would love for use any of those, use a different one, I don't know. But I do not like being given awesome tools and then not having them for a situation they'd be perfect for because I had to give you a boon recently by burning those tools to the ground. Scrapper is going to be easier with the ability to use the Mechanist Mace, but it still is having to do leap combos to generate quickness, whereas Harbinger just emits it passively. Why? So it's just, there's major inequality among how the classes provide boons, and I dislike that, and I will point that out when I see it. I will point that out. So, the second thing with Spirited Arrival is going to give more might. Spirited Arrival is you generate might and fury when you swap pets. So that means you constantly have a rotation where you have to swap your pets as often as possible to keep that up. I did 5 raids this morning, chat. I did raid wing 1, 2, 3, 4, and half of 5 before I ran out of time. It was at a pug group. It was an excellent pug, and I was running Spirited Arrival, and I gotta say, it felt horrible. On Gorseval, I usually there's actually 2 raid bosses, where I feel like a pet class. Gorseval, you can have a ranger can have their pet go around the room and kill those orbs that are expanding. You can have your pet constantly killing orbs. You actually feel like a pet class while you're working on the boss. Samurag, you can have your pet killing the spears in the same way. Those are the main 2 fights I feel like a pet class in this game. Could not do that well because every time I pet swapped, my pet would snap back to my side with no boons because I just swapped to it. So forcing us to constantly swap pets on a rotation doesn't feel good. One, your pet keeps snapping back to you and can't be doing a job you sent them to do. 2, they lose all their boons every time you swap them. And 3, you cannot have an ability primed and ready for a certain moment. As an example, if you're doing Bone Skinner and you're like, okay, we're about to get hit with a whole ton of bullets, all right, swap to the Siege Turtle and deploy the shield now, can't do that because you're having to burn your pet swap. It might, it's often going to be on cooldown. You're having to burn it constantly. And we're having to burn the F2 if you're using Invigorating Bond to give protection now and Rejuvenation to get regeneration now. The F2s are not things you save for situations anymore. I think that's very unfortunate. I'm not a fan of that. Again, comparing to Harbinger that just omits it. So, or Heal Mech even. So it's, I'm not a fan of that. I would like to see that go. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but yeah, that's how it is right now. So, that's it for Druid. That's it. So they're doubling down on go into Astral and burn it for alacrity and burn your pet swap a whole lot if you want to keep might up, unless you're getting enough of it from other sources. Untamed. Quickness Untamed has a few issues that we're tackling in the July 18th release. So really quick TLDR, if you were trying to do an Untamed DPS build that provided quickness to its party, it was not realistically possible. That's pretty much what you need to know to understand the rest of this. The first being a usability improvement for Luce's Ambush Reset component. Triggering the Ambush Reset while in the Unleashed state will now immediately grant access to the Ambush skill instead of requiring a transition out of and back into the Unleashed state. We're also making a slight increase to the quickness duration to make it easier to maintain the quickness. Let Loose increases quickness duration from 4 to 5 seconds in PvE. This trait will now immediately grant access to Unleashed Ambush skills when swapping weapons while in the Unleashed state. I'm very curious to know if that's going to be enough. I'll leave that to the people that are more math nerdy than me. This is a good start. I hope it's enough for them. I truly do. Because if they're going to give Untamed quickness, they should be able to be a quickness DPS that can join a group and fulfill the role, just like a Harbinger or a DPS Scrapper or a Quick Brand. They should be able to, do the job. Right now, they can't do the job. Herald. The new implementation for Quickness Herald is another case that we're looking to improve. The current timing around its quickness application can be clunky and hard to track due to the 3-second pulse interval. To address this, we'll be rebalancing the duration around a 1-second pulse interval to make it a bit more responsive. We've also seen concerns around the reduction in boon up times due to the loss of the extra facet pulses from Draconic Echo, and are giving additional sources of concentration to help mitigate this. Our hope is that these changes will improve the overall gameplay feel of Quickness Herald, but if we're still seeing issues with the general implementation after the July 18th release, we'll evaluate whether a larger rework is needed. Elevated Compassion reduces quickness pulse interval from 3 seconds to 1 second, a reduced quickness duration from 3 seconds to 1.25. This trait now converts 30% of the Herald's power into concentration instead, in addition to other effects. Reinforced Potency increases concentration from 120 to 240, and Shared Empowerment increases might duration from 8 to 12. Okay, so Herald has a couple of issues. Like, one, in World v. World, my understanding is that they're basically immortal right now. They even had to do an emergency tweet where they said, like, we have temporarily shut off these 2 traits because they can't be killed. So that's one thing. Herald in PvE, this is going back into my opinion and not fact, so it's important to separate the two. Herald in PvE has been way less fun since the patch, because similar to Druid, they're being forced to swap constantly and burn cooldowns in order to keep up a boon. They now have to constantly drain their resources, which eventually forces them to do a swap and then drain their resources. So it'd be like Centaur, swap, Glint, swap, Centaur, or Dwarf, whatever, Dwarf, swap, Demon, swap, Dwarf, swap. And they're forced into doing that, and they can't just be like, I'm going to be Dwarf and save Demon for this upcoming moment where I need it. You have to just, like, line them up, which is... just in my MMO experience, it's far more difficult to do it that way. But that's the changes that they're making. Deadeye. Quickness Deadeye is significantly overperforming where it should be damage-wise. Shocked Pikachu face. This was partially due to a bug that caused Malicious Intent to be active when not equipped, but looking beyond that fix, it's clear that additional reductions will be needed. We're still discussing exactly what changes will be made, but they will be finalized in time for the July release and likely include a reduction to 1 in the chamber's damage bonus. So Deadeye. We don't know what we're doing, but we're going to shoot you somehow between now and July 18th. Stay tuned. It'll be fantastic. Specter. Alacrity Specter is another build overperforming in terms of damage. This is partially due to the fact Alacrity duration has been being long enough to require minimal investment into concentration, but also due to the lack of significant damage trade-off in the Grandmaster trait slot. We'll be tuning up Strength of Shadows while bringing down some of the Spectre's other damage sources to bring the Alacrity build more in line without negatively affecting damage builds. Lastly, we're providing the protection duration of Shadow Sap to ensure that healing-focused Spectre builds have a reliable source of group protection. Shadow Step reduced Alacrity duration from 2 to 1.25 in PvE. Strength of Shadows, this trait no longer... Okay, so just real quick, this is where they're trying to force you to get some concentration gear. Strength of Shadows, this trait no longer reduces incoming damage and no longer increases the duration of torment inflicted by Rotwallow Venom, but instead increases torment damage by 25% in addition to converting Vitality to Expertise. Larcenous Torment, this trait no longer increases torment damage and instead steals health from an ally when you apply torment to them. Shadow Sap increases protection duration from 2.5 seconds to 4 seconds in PvE only. Without having seen them, my gut instinct is I think I like these changes. Because Alacrity Specter was giving up very, very, very tiny amounts of damage to give Alacrity to their party. And most classes have to do a trade-off. You know, they either they do big damage or they provide a big boon and maybe that gets them into a group. So I like this on paper. I hope it turns out as well as I hope it does. A lot of hope there. Alacrity Willbender. A big pain point with Alacrity Willbender is its inability to provide alacrity during phase transitions or other times where it can't strike an enemy. We're hoping to mitigate this by updating Phoenix Protocol to grant some alacrity on the activation of Resolve, which also can also be shared via Battle Presence. We've also cleaned up some aftercasts and made general improvements to animations for a few key damage skills with the goal of making the overall gameplay feel a bit more fluid. One note I have seen about that is that Quickness Catalyst and Quickness Alacrity Chronomancers, Quickness or Alacrity Chronos, have the exact same pain point. Their inability to provide a buff during phase transitions or other times where it can't strike an enemy. And they're not getting anything on this. So that is something that has been sent to me a few times today already. Alright, Phoenix Protocol. This trait now grants alacrity to the Willbender when activating Flowing Resolve, 5 seconds PvE, 3 seconds in other modes, which can be shared with allies with Battle Presence. Reduce the alacrity duration when Resolve triggers from 1.5 seconds to 1 second in PvE only. Restorative Virtues. This trait now grants Vigor instead of alacrity. Symbol of Resolution, this trait can now be interrupted by other skills. Ray of Judgment, reduced aftercast. Binding Blade, this skill will now use a different animation with less aftercast. Alright, all I could do is really read those off. I don't play Willbender like at all, so that's the changes they're making there. Oh my god, is that the end of the notes? Oh man, I thought there'd be a lot more. Warrior's fine, learn to play. Alacrity Mirage. Last up is a rework to how Mirage grants alacrity. We want there to be a better distinction between alac and non-alac builds, which is something that can be a bit blurry at times due to Chaos Vortex granting alac with no investment. This alacrity is being rolled into a rework of Mirage Mantle that provides all ambush skills in various ways, which can be seen in the patch notes below. Mirage Mantle has been reworked, ambush skills are improved. Okay. Axes of Symmetry also inflicts cripple. Mirage Thrust, remove a boon from struck foes. Ether Barrage grants quickness to self for 1.5 seconds. Split Surge deals increased damage, 25% in PvE, 10, I guess that's 10%, or just 10 damage. You guys are getting plus 10 damage in PvP and World v World, exactly 10. Chaos Vortex, AoE alac, 2.5 seconds for the player, 0.5 second for clones. Ambush Assault grants Might to Self, and Wave of Panic also inflicts Torment. And that is the Shade Duration! Lots of updudes for there. Let's see. Yeah, there's Lack of mention of shade duration is a mistake. What are you doing? Yeah. Yeah, okay, so those are the changes. There's a couple of good things in here. It looks like Scourge is getting some band-aids. I don't know if it's enough. I hope it is, but Scourge is getting some band-aids. Druid, I'm sorry, let's skip Druid for a second. Untamed absolutely needs this. I hope this is enough to make quick Untamed a viable thing, because right now it's not. Herald is... it's hard for me to say. I do think changing from 3-second pulses to 1-second pulses is far better. That is better for, you know, ease of gameplay. But the rest of it, and of course, there's also not been much mention about the bug where heralds are just like unkillable world v world, so that's the thing. Deadeye was overperforming. Alacrity Specter was doing as much damage almost as not Alacrity Specter, so I'm not really surprised to see this one. Willbender and Mirage, I don't really know enough about those to say anything more than what I've already reported. And Druid, you know, if you love the new gameplay style of Druid, this is probably going to make it perfect. This additional duration to how the alacrity is provided and Spirited Animal is probably going to fill in the gaps for, like right now it's really tough to quite keep that 100% boon duration. I think this will fill in the gaps and you might love it. I've already said my opinions on the matter, so I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so that's it. That is the end of these notes of what is coming down the pipeline, and these should hit on July 18th. Yeah,